There's a mask you wear every single day. It smiles when you're tired. It agrees when you're breaking. It keeps the peace while you're screaming inside. And over time, it doesn't just cover your truth, it buries it. You dress it up as strength, you call it composure. But deep down, you know it's fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of being seen. Fear of being you. And the longer you wear it, the more your soul forgets what freedom feels like. Because this isn't just a mask, it's a prison. A carefully crafted performance that keeps the world comfortable while you silently drown. You laugh when you want to cry. You say, "I'm fine." When your world's collapsing, you keep everything polished on the surface while the real you locked in a back room waiting for permission to exist. But let's ask the hard question. Who are you really? When no one's watching. Not the version you post, not the version you project, not the version that keeps everyone else happy. I'm talking about the version that's raw, unfiltered, messy, honest. The version you buried to survive. See, somewhere along the way, you were taught that your truth was too much, too emotional, too intense, too loud, too different. So you shrank, you softened, you hid the fire inside you just to fit in with people who never deserved to know the real you. And now you walk around with this mask every day at work, at home, even with friends, and they think they know you. But deep down you know they only know the version you let them see. That mask has become your identity. And that's the problem, because when you hide for too long, you forget what it feels like to live. You start confusing performance with purpose. You start mistaking survival for strength. You start thinking, this is just who I am now. But it's not. That version of you is just a performance, polished, controlled, safe. But the real you, that person is still inside, still waiting, still hoping for the day you'll be brave enough to peel back the mask and say, this is me. No filters, no front, no apology. Let me tell you something no one else will. That mask, it's killing you slowly, not physically, not immediately, but emotionally, spiritually, day by day. It eats away your authenticity, your joy, your energy, your peace. And it's subtle. You don't notice it at first. You just feel a little more tired, a little more numb, a little more disconnected until one day you look in the mirror and you have no idea who's staring back. That's what happens when you hide for too long. You become a stranger to yourself. So today, we're not here to talk about pretending. We're not here to talk about playing it safe. We're here to rip the mask off, to call out the lies, to face the fear, to get honest, brutally, beautifully honest about who you are and who you're meant to become. Because the world doesn't need another copy. It needs you. Not your mask. Not your act. You, the bold, broken, healing, honest version of you. And if you're tired of hiding, if you're ready to breathe again, if you're done living for everyone but yourself, then listen closely because this is where it begins. This is where the mask finally comes off, the hidden cost of pretending. Pretending is exhausting, waking up every day and stepping into a role that doesn't reflect who you are. That's not strength. That's emotional starvation. You smile on cue. You nod when you want to scream. You water down your truth so nobody else feels uncomfortable. And maybe it works for a while. Maybe you even convince yourself that it's just part of being mature. That this is what adulthood looks like. Silencing yourself to keep the peace isn't peace. It's internal warfare. And the more you perform, the more you disconnect from people, from meaning, from the mirror. You start walking through life like a ghost. Visible to everyone, but invisible to yourself. And what's worse, you think that's what being strong means. You think that holding everything in makes you powerful. You think that carrying other people's expectations makes you worthy. But it doesn't. It makes you tired. Because while they're applauding the version of you they like, you're slowly grieving the version of you they'll never see. And that grief, that quiet ache in your chest that shows up when everything's fine, that's your truth knocking. That's the real you trying to breathe under the weight of performance. You weren't born to be a replica. You weren't designed to fit a mold. You weren't created to constantly ask, who do they need me to be today? You were built to be whole, not liked. Real, not perfect. But somewhere along the way, you chose survival over self. And I get it. Life taught you that being you came with consequences. You were told you were too emotional, too intense, too different. So, you started adjusting, shrinking, smoothing your edges to fit into boxes you never asked for. And now you're here, well dressed, well liked, well spoken, but emotionally homeless. Because no matter how well you fake it, you can't thrive in a life built on pretending. You can't experience real love when you never show the real you. You can't feel real confidence when you keep hiding your flaws. You can't find real belonging when your soul is disguised just to be accepted. The truth is, pretending may keep people close, but it keeps your own self far away. And what's the point of being accepted by the world if it costs you your identity? You weren't created to live in fragments. You weren't meant to walk around masked up, performing, pleasing, protecting. You were made to live free. And the first step toward that freedom, recognizing the price you're paying to be who you're not. Because the longer you pretend, the more expensive it becomes. Not in dollars, but in dignity. Not in fame, but in freedom. Not in image, but in intimacy. And that cost, it's one you can't afford anymore. When you fake it too long, you forget who you are. There comes a point when the mask doesn't just hide you. It replaces you, and that's the most dangerous part because you don't even notice it happening. You're busy, you're smiling, you're doing your best. Under all that noise, you start to slip away quietly. You start to forget what you want. You forget what lights you up, what breaks your heart, what makes you feel alive. You even forget what silence sounds like without judgment. All that space inside you that once held dreams, fire, curiosity, and truth, it gets crowded with the expectations of everyone else, and you stop living. You start maintaining, managing an identity that doesn't belong to you. You dress for it. You speak for it. You think for it. And the worst part, you begin defending the very mask that's been suffocating you. You tell yourself things like, "This is just how life is. This is what people expect from me. I can't just change everything now." But those aren't truths. They're excuses wrapped in fear, because deep down in the quiet corners of your mind, there's still a whisper. A whisper that says, "This isn't me. This isn't how I'm meant to live. There's more." And that whisper, it's you underneath it all trying to remember. Because there was a time you knew who you were, before you were edited by pressure, before you were filtered by fear, before you were shaped by silence and survival. You were bold, you were weird, you were honest, you were real, and you didn't apologize for it. But then came the opinions, the rejections, the disappointments. And little by little, you learned that the world doesn't always love what's real. So you covered up, smoothed the rough edges, turned your volume down. And the more you did that, the more acceptable you became, and the more disconnected you felt. Disconnected from yourself, from your purpose, from your joy. That's the cost of pretending. You gain approval, but lose alignment. You gain applause, but lose authenticity. And the truth is, no amount of external validation will ever fill the void created by self-abandonment. Because when you lose touch with yourself, you don't just lose peace, you lose power. Power to speak up, power to say no, power to set boundaries, power to choose who you are without needing anyone's permission. So, if you're wondering why you feel so tired all the time, why nothing feels fulfilling, why every win feels hollow, maybe it's because you've been living for everyone else's version of you, and somewhere along the way, you stopped living as you. The mask has done its job. It kept you safe, but now it's doing something else. It's keeping you small, and the longer you stay behind it, the harder it becomes to break free. But you still can. You can still remember. You can still return. You can still reclaim yourself. And that starts with one simple but terrifying decision to stop performing and start showing up raw, real, and unapologetic. Because the mask may have helped you survive, but it will never help you live. People-pleasing is self-betrayal dressed as kindness. Let's strip the lie. You're not wearing the mask just to keep the peace. You're wearing it because somewhere along the way you decided that your truth was too heavy for the room. You smile when you disagree. You say yes when every part of you wants to say no. You listen to others' pain. Hold space for their storms. But when it's your turn to speak, you swallow your truth because you don't want to be a problem. That's not compassion. That's self-erasure. And the scariest part, the world rewards it. It claps when you're agreeable. It celebrates when you bend. It compliments your patience, your softness, your sacrifice. But they're not clapping for your strength. They're clapping for your silence. And deep down, you know it. You've made a habit of betraying yourself quietly, and you justify it by calling it love. But hear me clearly. Love doesn't demand your disappearance. Kindness is not measured by how much of yourself you can delete to fit someone else's comfort. You weren't born to blend in. You weren't created to carry guilt every time you draw a line. You weren't meant to trade your peace for proximity every time you say yes to keep the room calm, but rage inside silently. That's a piece of you dying, and not one of those people knows what it cost you. You carry everyone. You hold space for their wounds. You apologize when you're not wrong. You over-explain your boundaries just to not seem selfish, and the mask gets heavier every time. But here's the truth. Most people won't say you don't owe anyone the version of you that keeps you empty. You don't owe them your comfort zone, your emotional labor, your constant availability. Because the moment you start needing to betray yourself just to be loved, that love becomes a cage. The ones who only love your mask, they never deserved access to the real you in the first place. So if you want freedom, if you want to breathe again, you have to stop handing your identity to people who wouldn't know what to do with it. You are not here to keep everyone happy. You are not here to maintain the peace at the cost of your own. You are not here to earn your place by disappearing. And if someone walks away when you take off the mask, let them. Because the people who truly see you won't need you to wear a disguise just to stay. Remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Before the pressure, before the rejection, before the mask, there was you, unfiltered, unpolished, unapologetically whole. Do you remember? You used to speak your truth without flinching. You used to create without fear of judgment. You used to laugh from your belly, not your throat. You used to walk into rooms without shrinking, just to make others comfortable. But then life happened. Someone told you to calm down, to be realistic, to tone it down, to stop dreaming so loud. And little by little, you started editing yourself. Not because you wanted to, but because you thought you had to. And now you carry a version of yourself that pleases them, but starves you. But let me ask you something. What if you stopped waiting for permission? What if you peeled off every layer they added? The expectations, the pressure, the guilt, the fake smile. What if you stopped trying to be who they wanted and started becoming who you actually are? Because the real you isn't gone. They're just buried under years of people-pleasing, under habits of avoidance, under the fear of not being accepted. You can't heal what you keep hiding. You can't grow into yourself if you never let yourself be seen. And I'm not talking about being loud or dramatic. I'm talking about being honest. The kind of honesty that says, I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of performing. I'm ready to be known, even if it's messy, because you don't find power in perfection. You find it in presence, and the only way to be truly present in your life is to show up as yourself. Yes, people might walk away. Yes, some will talk. Yes, you might feel naked at first. But let them go. Let them judge. Let them misunderstand. Because every person who falls away when you remove the mask, they were never clapping for you. They were clapping for your act and your soul. It didn't come here to perform. It came here to be free. So if you want to live, not just survive, you've got to remember who you were before you became who they told you to be. Because the real you is still in there waiting for the day you finally say, I'm done hiding. So, here we are. You've carried the mask long enough. You've smiled through pain, nodded through pressure, and disappeared behind perfection. But deep down, you know that version of you is not the whole truth. It's time to come home to yourself. Not the version they liked. Not the version they accepted. The real you. The one that breathes without permission and speaks without filters. Because peace isn't found in pretending. It's found in presence, in living fully, loudly, imperfectly as yourself. The world will always have opinions. Let them. But your life, it's too precious to waste performing in someone else's script. So, here's the choice. Stay hidden and safe, or show up and finally start living. Take off the mask. Let the world adjust. You weren't born to be invisible. You were born to be free.